Kerry McAvoy. I'm going live on TikTok, and I'm going to be taking the audience's questions about mental health issues, particularly about narcissistic abuse. So let's see what kind of questions everybody has as we kick off this week, this short week of following 4th of July. I never can read oh, there we go. The comments maybe are big enough for me to read. We'll see. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know, I was thinking about the differences between a condition and a disorder. We often get mixed up on this when we think about narcissistic abuse and narcissists in particular. We think that narcissism is a condition that's changeable, that's addressable, just like a flu is addressable or a cold. We think it's something that happens to someone instead of what it really is. So when the DSM-3 was created, they revamped it basically from the ground up. And one of the things that they did is they based everything that they put in it, all these conditions, as something observable. So when you go to DSM-3 or now the DSM-5, you're seeing a set of conditions and disorders that are based on observation. What happens when someone is depressed? What happens? What does it look like when you're anxious or when you have OCD? They separated them from conditions to disorders. Conditions are things like you getting a cold. There's a set of symptoms that you have. Your throat gets scratchy. Your nose starts to run. You start to cough. That's a condition. It's not a normal state for you. Something happens that takes over in a way, is how it feels to me. Takes over and gives you a group of symptoms, of signs, things that you can see that says to you you're having a problem. But you recognize at the time that this isn't you. You normally don't behave like this. That's what a condition is. Now, personality disorders are considered disorders, and disorders are not the same as conditions. Yes, we get kind of lazy and we use the word disorder as if it is a condition, but it really isn't. A disorder is what happens when you are being you and it doesn't go well. So, for example, that might be, say that you don't show up at work consistently. You have a habit of not prioritizing your commitment to your job. Or say you don't finish things. You get very distractible and you move from thing to thing. Maybe you're a person who has problems managing anger and you end up, as a result, blowing up and losing relationship after relationship. Narcissistic personality disorder is a disorder. It's you being you, but it creates this whole kind of trail of disaster behind you because of the way that you are being is problematic for everyone around you. That's where we get messed up. When we as victims think that this is a condition and not a disorder, we think then it can be fixed, just like we can treat a cold, or worse, or even maybe a better example, we can treat diabetes or heart disease. We do things differently. We go get exercise. We eat a different diet. We go see the doctor. We take our medication and we get better from heart disease or whatever it is. We often end up thinking when we're in these relationships that if we could just be different, be more, show up, care, love them better, or something, that we can fix the way that they're broken, at least the way that they're affecting us, so that we can end up being better. The problem is, it isn't. It's part of who they are. And that's something that's very, very difficult to change. It takes a lot of effort to change who we are. But I think that piece gets missed on victims. I think that's why we end up putting so much time and effort thinking that we can somehow, this is solvable, when it's really not solvable at all. So let me introduce myself to you for those of you who are new to my platform. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of clinical experience. These days, I primarily focus on narcissistic abuse and on increasing our awareness, talking about it. I'm also a narcissistic abuse survivor myself, in addition to treating narcissists in the office. So I have both clinical experience and personal experience. And I love taking your questions and hearing everything that's related to what's going on in your world about narcissism. So if you are interested in asking me a question about it or anything related to mental health, because of the way that TikTok sort of runs things these days, it doesn't really make questions very easily findable for me. So put a thumbs up ahead of your question, your comment, and then I'll know you're talking to me. Otherwise, I'll just figure you're talking to each other or just making a comment for everybody to be aware of. But I would love to take your questions. So what is the things about narcissism or narcissistic relationships that maybe you're struggling with? Somebody asked, and I thought it's kind of interesting. Oh, I forgot to tell you the rules of the room. There's a couple rules of the room. We don't talk about my appearance. We also don't talk about religion and politics. So other than that, we can talk about whatever's related to mental health. And I'm just really fascinated to hang out with you guys today. I'm looking forward to it. So Jawa Bean says she's starting to save $200 a week to get out. I'm so excited for you. It is hard work. I think that's one thing that I have found. I would be curious if that's the same for you, Jawa. I have found that it's very hard to have people understand how difficult it is to leave. They end up thinking that it's just a matter of will, a lack of willpower. We just haven't decided that we have had enough. We haven't packed our bags and got out. What people don't understand about narcissists in particular is that they have a paranoid worldview. They really believe that it's us against them, and everybody is included in the us, even those that they love. So even though you've maybe married them or have children with them, you're still a part of the them. They see you as opposing them and therefore as dangerous. And as a result, they lock up control around everything. They'll control the finances. They'll control your bank account. They'll even control your time. They certainly control the kid. They'll just everything they can that's important to you. And they seem to have like a sixth sense when it comes to figuring out what's important to you. They will really manage the things that are most important to you and make it difficult. And then they do this other thing that people really don't understand either, which frustrates me because it's just, they make it way too simple. Narcissists and other toxic people make sure that it will hurt when you leave. They don't want you leaving. Remember, it's all about control. They want you under their control. So they're going to make sure that if you leave, it will cost you something so valuable, something so much a part of who you are, the integrity of who you are as a person, that you can't bear to lose it. And that way they keep you from leaving. It makes sense when you think about it. If you're a person who's afraid of failure, you're afraid of loss of control, you don't want any exposure, what are you going to do to manage that? Well, you're going to make it sure that no one leaves you unless it's on your terms, So that's why they make it very, very difficult. It will cost any of us who've been in these relationships, it will cost us something very huge in order to leave. And sometimes for some of us, what it will cost us is so large, we're not for sure we can afford it. And we're not for sure as a result we can get out. So that's why it's so super hard to get out. So I want to celebrate for you saving $200. That is awesome. That is awesome, because way to go to get a start of getting out. It's amazing. I'm so excited about that. What is narcissism? Someone just asked about that. And I think, and I will kind of tie in also the next question of, are they ever aware they're narcissistic? So narcissism, as I said in the beginning, is based upon what's observed. And so when the founders of the DSM-3, which was the big major transition in the way we think about mental conditions, and it came out in 1980, that's the first time narcissistic personality disorder actually showed up as an observable condition to be diagnosed. It was in 1980. Not that it wasn't there. It wasn't there. It was just called something else. We thought about it differently. But in 1980 going forward, it's based upon 9 criteria. You have to have 9 different criteria. You have to have 5 of the 9 in order to be diagnosed. What they encapsulate is, I'm not going to tell you all 9. It's very easy for you to Google and find the 9. But what they encapsulate is a way in which these individuals or kind of interact with people, with relationships, and with themselves. They struggle with self-direction. They tend to lack focus. They get bored very quickly. They move from thing to thing. They also struggle with intimacy. They end up having a hard time showing up at relationships and being vulnerable, sharing who they are. They have a difficult time with empathy. So when it comes to understanding what it's like from another person's perspective, they're not aware, and that impacts them at a lot of levels. That also makes them very poor at self-reflection. It makes them, empathy, if you think about it, is really like our version of pain receptors, but for the psychological, emotional self. So if you put your hand on a hot stove and it starts to burn, you jerk back, you change it in order to stop the burning. Empathy does the same thing. It gives us a sense of how we're affecting other people. But if we don't have a good sense of empathy, we don't know that we're hurting them because it's hurting us, then we don't stop. We do things that are very cruel and callous and thoughtless. So not having empathy just makes us then very, very hurtful, makes us very blunt people in the world. We're not sensitive. We roll over everybody. So self-direction, empathy, intimacy, and I'm missing one more. I'm trying to think of what it is. So there's kind of these 4 realms that they struggle with, and that they're vulnerable and broken around. And as a result, that they then end up having a hard time having good work relationships and having a hard time with love relationships. And the other part with them is because of the fragile ego, they're very deceptive. They feel if you knew who they really were, then you wouldn't like them, that you would reject them. So as a result, they don't show up as themselves. They've learned to mask themselves, mimic other people, and parrot other people. So you don't really get a experience of this person as a person. You get experience of how they think you want them to show up in order for them to sort of insulate themselves from rejection. It's very, very sad. But what's hard is because all of this brokenness results in them in being very hurtful. They're very often callous, cruel, and then they leave this swath of broken relationships behind them. So, do they ever wonder if they're a narcissist? Well, it takes self-reflection for us to know that we're having a problem. And if we're not being aware that, oh, I just realized I'm going to do something. So sorry about that. I probably had a pause because I realized I was on cellular, not Wi-Fi, and that makes an unstable connection here. So I want to make sure the connection is stable. So I'm back. So yes, I know I was gone for a second, but I'm back. So thank you, by the way, for those of you who are liking this page. I didn't know for the longest time. You know how you like a page when you're watching a live? You just tap the screen. So thank you for that because it helps drive the metrics up. And I also thank you for following me and sharing this because I really appreciate getting this information out. There's so many myths about narcissistic abuse. It's really great when we can educate and help more people because I just heard Sandra Brown speak on a seminar, and she wrote the book Women Who Love Psychopaths. She's done 30 years worth of research in narcissistic abuse, although she doesn't call it that. She calls it pathological love relationships. But in this seminar, she said there are millions and millions of victims, not thousands, millions of victims. And when I think about the numbers, it makes sense to me because if you take every narcissist and you think of everybody that they touch in their lives, and then you think about the number of relationships they burn through because they're destructive, which is going to be higher than the average person's number of relationships. That's a lot of people, especially if approximately 7% of the population is narcissistic. It's a whole lot of people. So do they know that they're narcissistic? Well, it takes self-reflection for you to know that you're messing up everything. They have to see it some way. So those that I know who've gotten help come in for therapy, usually there's been some big crisis moment in their life that made them think, this is not working out. I'm actually hurting. It's hurting me. What I'm doing is hurting me. I'm losing a job, or I'm about ready to lose the kids, and usually they don't even have enough wherewithal to care about the kids in the way that you and I would think about that. But there's usually something that means something to them. Maybe it's the loss of money or an asset that they're really invested in, but something happens, and as a result of that, they end up realizing that they have problems. But it usually takes a crisis for them to be aware that there's something really serious going wrong. So, one thing we often don't recognize is that a problem of narcissism isn't just with our love relationships. It also happens in our work relationships and our neighbors. So I see Sarah Jane was struggling with a neighbor who's a narcissist that she befriended, and now she no longer wishes she ever had done that. What I'd recommend, Sarah Jane, is that you're taking stock of your relationships like that and you think you got into one that's over your head, it's not working out for you. I know it's a neighbor, which means you can't not see this person down the road. I get that, but I would recommend that you still go limited contact. I know it's called yellow contact instead of no contact. Maybe you go, careful, you back up, you get more nonchalant, you become less available. I recommend that you kind of back out slowly, and maybe with that detachment they become disinterested. But we need to be watching for this at all levels. It's not just in our love relationships this is a problem. Oh, so I'm reading more of what you're saying. You're saying that she's been spreading rumors about you. Yeah, that's what they do. We call that the smear campaign. They do that as a way to control you, as a way to often to leverage you in some way to get you back to do what they want you to do. That's very common. And then now it's affecting your job and your social status. Oh, I'm so sorry. That sounds very, very tough. So what do we do about that? There's not a lot. Here's the thing I told you narcissists are good at boxing us in, making it really hurt. They usually can anticipate how we're going to react, so they've already preset whoever's they're speaking to for the way we may react. They may have warned that you're going to say or do certain things, and so when you do them, you've affirmed that what they're saying is real because you've confirmed by predicting your behavior. Does that make sense what I'm saying? They'll say, she always says this one thing and she says it about me a lot. And then when you go and you say it to these people, because it may be true, they'll say, yeah, well, I was warned about this. This person fits exactly the bill that I was just told to watch out for. So I would be very, very aware that that's possibly happened in your case, or certainly happens for those of us who've been in an intimate relationship with narcissists. So I have hard advice for you. And any of you who are familiar with my channel or my YouTube, who's familiar with my TikTok know that this about me. I'm also, by the way, I need to say that, I'm on YouTube. I'm going to be reposting these these lives. I'm going to be reposting. Let me try that again. I'm also on YouTube. I'm going to repost these lives over on YouTube tomorrow afternoon. So if you're interested in seeing the whole of this, feel free to check it out. It'll be up there so you can rewatch this if you missed something. Or maybe I say something that didn't quite make sense and you need to hear it again in order to maybe get more what I meant by it. So I know sometimes I have to hear things more than once in order to understand. What I would recommend, what you do about the smear campaign happening, and this is for all of us, whether you're leaving a toxic relationship or you're having this happen with a neighbor or a coworker, you're not going to be able to control what people say about you. You cannot control that. You also cannot control what people do with what they hear, what they believe. To me, it says something about the people who believe it. It says that these are people who may not be who I thought they were, and certainly don't know me as well as I hoped they would know me. Because anyone who knows me would know these things, or takes the time to know me, or has the maturity to see that there's always two sides to things, would take the time to hear more of my side. So I don't know how to stop it affecting your job, but I am really sorry that this is happening. And yes, that this is what I would start talking about when I said narcissists make sure that it hurts us when we try to leave them. They have like this sixth sense, and they know when things are not going well, and they will make these moves against us that are just devastating. And that's why it's so difficult to get out of these toxic relationships. So I have to comment on Bug Serial's comment about how much this person hates us using narcissistic abuse because it demonizes everybody with a disorder. Well, to me, this is sort of a Chinese puzzle situation. If you read a definition by Dr. Kristen Milstead in Psych Central, which I often refer to, it's an amazing. So if you did a Google search, Psych Central, Dr. Kristen Milstead, definition of narcissistic abuse, she does this amazing layout of what it is. I really love it. It's awful. And most narcissists, almost all of them that I know who qualify for a narcissistic personality disorder, behave this way. It's the way that they treat, it's the nature of the disorder. It's the nature. You can't have the disorder unless you're doing these things. They are part and parcel. Does it demonize those who have narcissistic personality disorder? Yeah, I guess it probably does. It probably is very hurtful. But then you have a choice. If you discovered you have this condition and you're leaving this wake of destruction behind you in broken relationships, broken hearts, broken trust, then isn't on you to do something about it instead of telling the rest of the world to please stop referring to it as abusive. It is abusive. Shouldn't you stop the abuse? To stop being demonized is then to behave differently. We're using words that describe how we're being treated. It's hurtful, it's abusive, it's evil to those of us this happens to. To have someone, use my story, to have someone get into the relationship after they know I've been widowed, after a long marriage, and I'm brokenhearted, I'm still brokenhearted, to get into a relationship while they're seeing other people and yet insist on monogamy from me, make me think that I'm in a monogamous relationship, allow me to then get married believing all of this is true, knowing that they hope to be able to be added to my assets in order to take advantage of me. Is that not evil? It is. It is evil. What Sarah Jane was explaining about what's happening to her at her job, is that not evil? Yeah, it is. Why do we need to tear down and destroy another person's position, livelihood, and standing in the community just because there's a possible loss of this relationship? All of us need to learn to do better when it comes to how we act in relationships. All of us. We need to become kinder, more sensitive. We need to treat each other better. We need to be less abusive and assaultive. So, to me, if you discover that you are hurting people and that maybe you have too many narcissistic traits, I see that as on you to do something about it, not on me to not call it what it is. I know we've gotten into this very careful society about how we try not to step on each other's toes, but there's a whole group of people. Everyone around you is being stepped on by the behavior. Stop stepping on us. We'll stop calling it that. That to me, it's the Chinese puzzle. It's one of these both poles things. You want it to be different, then be different. So Dilly Queen asks, any tips on relearning what a healthy amount of feelings is to share with people after narcissistic abuse? Yes, isn't that sad we even have to ask this question? I just find this very, ironic, and I've had people come back and say, really, I have to be aware that if I meet a toxic person, they're creating a mask in the moment because they're hearing who I am and they're now making themselves into who I want them to be. By the way, I'll have to find it. I saw a YouTube video yesterday on a sociopath, an admitted sociopath who said he limits his contact with other people because he can't stop from doing this. He knows that he has this goal of making you like him and showing up the way that you want so that he can find a chink in your armor to attack you. He says this. Isn't that wild? So we have to be aware of people who are actually doing this in order to protect ourselves. So how do we do it? How do you even develop a relationship after post-narcissistic abuse and not be scared this person's going to be abusive? What I have found that really helps is I have had to learn to really tune in and trust my gut. I've had to figure out what warnings I get when I'm sitting with someone who's more narcissistic. They tend to trigger me in some ways. And probably, Dilly Queen, you find that they trigger you in certain ways. Like maybe you feel an excessive need to seek their approval. I'm just throwing things out. I'm not saying that's true. Maybe for me, one of the things I'm aware is I'm suddenly insecure. I'm suddenly aware of everything about my dress or my hair or my makeup that's not perfect. And I start to feel very self-conscious. So when I feel excessively self-conscious, I say to myself, is it possible that I'm with someone who's narcissistic? I'm not saying they are. I'm just asking. I start to ask. But pay attention to how they make you feel because you're reacting. We all do. We all react to each other all the time. We're in this reciprocal emotional feedback loop with each other, informing each other, and then shaping how we show up, and shaping even how we feel about ourselves in the process. So as you pay attention to that, it will really help you to begin to identify who's actually not safe. I found in my first date with a narcissist, there was a couple things I noticed that were bothersome that now, if I ever saw them, I would see it differently. He revealed too much of his backstory. It was very sensitive, and I thought it was too early to tell me. And it actually put me in an awkward spot. I considered whether or not I should tell him more of my backstory, and I didn't feel ready. So when I feel someone's kind of like a push on that, now I know, watch it, that may be manipulative. The other thing that he did was he needed to sort of label me in certain ways, like me talking. And these days I talk more than I used to, but back in the day, I used to not be a big talker. I would let you talk and I wouldn't talk much. But he said and he controlled the conversation at least 60% of the time, maybe even more. But he said that I was a big talker and I talked a lot. Or wasn't. I know that if you and I actually had a stopwatch and you were timing me, you would find that I consumed less than half of the conversation, for maybe even less than a third of the conversation. But his perception was that I controlled too much of the floor. That's also, by the way, what's called typecasting. It's a way of getting us to behave in a different way. So it's sort of like it's a warning so that you don't want to hear that, so you'll be different. So I hope those things help. So those are some ideas. So lesbian mom's been out of her relationship for over 5 years, and yet her ex is still obsessed and trying to reach her through others. Oh my goodness. Isn't that amazing? They have this sense. This is the weird thing about narcissists. They see us as if we're like belongings. It's like you once were a car that they had, and they collect us. In their minds, we still occupy that warehouse where rich people keep cars, who have like this collection of cars. They may have a Rolls Royce, and maybe they have a Jaguar, and then they've got, a Lexus, and, whatever. They have this set of maybe they've got a relic of two. So they keep this collection of cars, and then whenever they want to, sometimes they periodically go out and they look at them. Maybe they dust them off. Maybe they take them for a Sunday drive. But that's what we're like on these. We become as if we forever belong to them, and they keep trying to have us in their lives. I know it's very bizarre. They don't see us as people and see this as a relationship that's end. They just keep stalking or haunting, and you got to be careful, because we being normal, thinking people change through the years, we might be lulled into the idea that this person's gotten better and they're not the same, and maybe we could risk it again. No. Even just that nature of that is not healthy behavior. They haven't moved on. So be very careful about that. So this is a good question. It wasn't posted to me, but I'm going to ask it. And I know somebody already answered it, but I have a different answer. The opposite to a narcissist is not an empath. Empaths is who they look for their targeted relationship. But that's actually not the opposite of a narcissist. The opposite of the narcissist is actually called an echo. And there's 2 books out there on it. It's not very, echoes are so let's think about it for a moment. Narcissists occupy the spotlight. They're all you can see. If you go back to the original story of Narcissus and Echo, Narcissus never saw Echo. She was there, but he never saw her. She just was doomed to be frozen in place, become a daffodil, echoing his last words. No, actually, he becomes a daffodil. She gets frozen to the space and just repeats his last word as a sound of what he just said. She doesn't even have her own voice. So echoes are so invisible that we don't even write about them. We don't talk about them. We don't even recognize them. They're the inverse of a narcissist. Narcissists, we can't see anything but the narcissist. They occupy all the space. Echoes occupy none of the space. They're literally the inverse of a narcissist. If you want to find some good books on it, there's 2 of them. Craig Melkin, Dr. Melkin, writes about it in his book. I think it's called Revisiting Narcissism. He has it in there. He even has a quiz, I believe, about it. And then there's another one, and I always get her name wrong. Her name is, I think it's Christina. I'm going to get her name wrong. I know it. I'll tell you what, though, it's in my resources. So if you want to read on it, I don't recommend Christina's, because hers, or Christine, hers is actually written theoretical. So it's very difficult. It's all about theory. You go back to Winnicott and Kernberg, and it's like reading graduate level heavy stuff. It's heavy. I mean, it's heavy. But Craig Melkins is very approachable. So if you want to learn more about what the opposite of narcissism is, it's egoism. These people have a hard time showing up. They are literally the wallflower. They're not very present. They only exist to the degree that they serve other people. I know some of you are going to say, well, you sounds like you're describing a people pleaser. No, it's not even that. It's less than that. So I will have to do more research into it and come back and talk to you more about it, but it's fascinating though. So empaths are who they're seeking, and echoes is their inverse. So who becomes an echo? Children of narcissistic parents are at risk of becoming an echo. Yeah, that's probably the biggest group that's more likely to do that. So Jerry's asking, do you have videos I can share? Absolutely. I'm a whole TikTok. I'm also now on YouTube, uploading more on YouTube, so you can find them there. So you can you can make sure that you pursue me over there and this will be over there if you want to listen to this, follow it again. So somebody says, I'm harming people with cluster B personality disorders. I'm actively harming them. Yeah, well, I don't think I'm actually challenging them to get better. That's what I'm challenging them. Because here, let me follow the logic out, because I think this is fascinating logic. Let's take it for a moment. If we stop warning people and stop talking about bad behavior and some people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing, what are we actually saying? So we're going to ignore that and allow people to be hurt, okay? And because we're going to harm a group who's harming people. So we're going to take care of that group's feelings, despite the fact that they're doing devastation. But meanwhile, they're harming many, many, many people because of this. But their feelings matter more than everybody they're harming. What? That doesn't work. That's not the economy I live in. My feelings matter as much as your feelings, right? My feelings matter as much as my ex feelings, right? He shouldn't have done what he did, right? Shouldn't he, right? That was wrong, right? Well, all this you're seeing here, all this pouring out of pain is wrong. But we're going to make sure that their feelings aren't hurt by not talking about it because it's uncomfortable or makes you feel bad, even though you're feeling bad because of a disorder that you have because you're doing things that are harmful. See, it just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I get where you're at. I don't want you to feel bad. So my solution, I think, is a better solution. Change. Yeah, you're going to tell me, well, it's very hard to change. I know it's hard to change. Get into therapy. Hold yourself accountable. Find accountability partner. When you start to feel the temptation, do something that's hurtful, like discarding, like faking, future faking, like hoovering, like be sarcastic and contempt and stonewalling, like lying. Stop. Don't do those things. Stop. That's the solution. So those of you who are new to me, please be sure to put a thumbs up ahead so that I know that it's a question. So right now I'm thumbing through and I was 86 behind. And I know that probably most of you lately haven't been putting that in because you didn't know. So I'm right now searching for questions. But there's been a lot of great activity in here. So one TikTok user says, I get stuck thinking there's nothing I could have done better. I just don't understand why he discarded me. There's a lot of us who think that, who feel like, what happened? What did I do that wasn't enough? So that's actually called cognitive dissonance. What you're feeling is cognitive dissonance, this sense of there's what's happened and then there's a sense of what you think should have happened or wish could happen or what you thought might be possible. There's this, do you recognize this dichotomy between what you wish and what actually happened, between the person that you both felt love and you loathed, the person that you trusted but you couldn't trust? That sense of both worlds is called cognitive dissonance. I'm going to be doing a live webinar with somebody I consider an expert. She's amazing, guys. You don't want to miss this. It's going to be August 18th at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. She wrote the book I think is the primer on this, really. It's called Why Can't I Just Leave? Why can't I just leave? I cannot say enough about this book. This explains it in the most best clear-cut, careful way I have ever seen, and we get to interview her. So me and 4 other panelists, Lindsay Goodman, Lisa Soni, Bree Peterson at the Abuse is Abuse, as well as Manjeet Ruprai, are interviewing her on August 18th at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be amazing. You can get the tickets in my link in my bio. There's only a limited seating, so please don't wait too long. I'd hate to have you miss out on this experience. But so how do we solve this dichotomy between what we thought could happen, what we thought might be real, and what actually is? Well, here's the hard part. The person you met didn't exist. The person you met was created on the fly in that moment so that you would like them, trust them, and let them into your lives. But that person wasn't who really you got into a relationship with. And once the relationship started to happen, that mask started dropping, you started to see more of who they really are in day-to-day life because they can't sustain it. That person is the real person. So you know how it feels like you've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. or Ms. Hyde? You know, you're living with these 2 different people. Dr. Jekyll isn't real. Mr. Hyde or Ms. Hyde is. That's the real person. It's when we keep believing that Dr. Jekyll could come back and may be real that keeps us stuck and why we can't leave and why we feel like it's our fault when things come apart. Part of that is done deliberately. They want you left in this state of confusion, so it gives them an excuse. When something bad happens, they can just pop back in, do a little love bombing. It becomes more breadcrumbing. You know, they just go to, instead of the whole wonderful package, you just get a small thing. It gets smaller and smaller, but they do that in order to keep you believing that who you met was real when that person wasn't real. They feel you slipping, and then they do something in order to keep you hooked. But it also messes with your mind and creates a state of confusion, leaving you to think that this person that you initially met wouldn't do this. Then why did it happen? There are 3 different types of discards. I found this fascinating. There's the discard where you get the love bombing, then the disillusionment starts to happen, and then the discard. So there's this process that happens. Then there's some of us who we never get much love bombing. It's just not good from the beginning to the end, and then it gets discarded. So there's that group too. And then there's another group that's, I don't even know how that group, I mean, to me, is I've heard of it. I know there's another content creator, it happened to her, where you think you're living with everything's fine, it's going great, and then they disappear. They just disappear. So I wonder if maybe that was more of yours, that you just thought things were moving along hunky-dory and all of a sudden they're gone. They're just gone. And wow, talk about rude awakening. That would be really, really painful. So I hope that helps with that feeling of feeling confused that you have. It is hard. One of the things I love about this community, I'm reading through all of your comments, is somebody mentioned how hard it is to talk about this. Here's a reason why. And part of the reason why is not only are we being sold a mask, but the public's being sold one too. The public is being sold that they're good people, that they're sane. It's called the mask of sanity. So that, and what's dangerous about that is then when people believe it, the people do believe it, and then they'll give you bad advice as a result of it. They'll say, oh, so-and-so's not, they would never do that, and yet what you've been living with in the inside of the relationship, you know differently. You know exactly what they're capable of doing. So please be very careful about advice you get from those around you. They've not seen much of, anybody can keep something up temporarily. If you see somebody for maybe an hour a week or less, you know, somebody at yesterday's barbecue, you can play the good guy for that. Or even for a holiday weekend. You can play a good guy or wonderful woman for that as well. But from the day to day, that's what you and I are living in. It's much harder. So we see more of the reveal. So please trust your gut above all things. You know what this person's capable of. One of the videos I posted was about gray rocking. I didn't call it that, but I said 4 things to do when someone is attacking you verbally. That's actually, I was describing the gray rock. I gave a verbal statement at the end that I was thinking if someone was criticizing you, and I said, well, the next time I'll try to do that better. But I would never say that you'd say that to every time. That was just per that. I had an imaginary scenario in my head, and I realized later I didn't mean it to be a universal response. But one of the things that many of you have come back with to me, and I really appreciate it, is it is so important that all of you know who you're in a relationship with, that you know whether or not this is safe to do or not safe to do. Don't ever make a move that would put you at risk. If going blank face and going bland around your partner would result in abuse, then please don't do it, because nobody wants you abused. This is only a recommendation that works with some people. But you need to trust your gut. You know your relationship better than anybody. How do narcissists treat their children, and how do we protect our children? So all people are not, it's called part objects in object relations theory. All people, narcissistic people or personality traits, treat people as if they're more like objects, more like resources or assets than they do people. And the same goes for children. They treat the children the same. What I see a lot of narcissistic people do is they end up creating kind of very just rigid roles in their family. They'll have one that's the smart kid, or another one who is the talented kid. There's another one who's sort of the clown. You'll see them sort of breaking kids into the role. There's often the parentified child, the kid who does a lot and kind of keeps things running around the house. Then you have a child who may be the lost child. This is usually someone who tends to disappear. There's often the golden kid. This is the kid who cannot do anything wrong. They somehow reflect well on the narcissist, so as a result, they're always talked up. You're going to find the scapegoat. Scapegoat usually is either because they are seen as the problematic person or the one that brings on embarrassment to the family, or they are the one that tells the truth. Telling the truth will get you scapegoated too. So they tend to sort of see people more in their children as one or two dimensional instead of fully. And they also then don't really get to know their kids in a real way, authentic way that encourages mature discussions and helpful advice. It's more sound like sound bites. And unfortunately, usually when there's a divorce, especially if it's with men, they often disappear from these children's lives. They'll concoct some excuse like, my ex-wife makes it really hard, or the courts worked against me. But the truth of the matter is that with anybody, they're out of sight, they're out of mind, unfortunately. Is it normal for them to already have another person in line, another relationship in line before they leave you? Yeah, it often is. You're going to find that that's pretty common. You'll find here, we call it supply, that they'll have a new supply lined up before they leave the other. It's because these people need attention all the time. They're constantly being driven on having somebody admiring them, listening to them, worshiping them, giving them love or admiration or whatever. And so as fast as they're seeing it close up with you, they've already started grooming quite a while ahead, getting the next person lined up, because they don't live without that. They're soothing their interior world through relationships. They don't do a lot of self-regulation, so they don't know how to do this calming, meditation, self-soothing, all of this sort of good self-care stuff. Instead, they use relationships as a form of self-care. And as a result, they churn through a lot of relationships. The other problem is they don't have realistic expectations of relationships. Some people have even theorized that most of their relationships are fantasy-based. So in their head, they serve as this grandiosity of what they think a perfect relationship would be like, and then every one of us is measured. We're almost like caricatures, or literally like characters casted in a movie. Problem is, we never got the script. We don't know the part, nor does the part allow us to be really ourselves. And the minute we start to fail, this hidden unknown thing, then they prepare to get rid of us. And they already start lining up. The next person that they fantasized is going to be the end-all be-all that will solve everything that's wrong with their lives. It's really sad. Really sad. Yeah. My ex actually shared with me a fantasy he had. This is what he was looking for in a woman, which I thought, man, dude, you sure picked somebody who was not anything like that. He said he fantasized that he would have a woman lie on the floor beside his bed while he slept, and then would wait on him hand and foot. What? Come again? I think that's called slavery, and it's outlawed. Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's really bizarre. So somebody asked me, what do I recommend when you have a mother or a parent who's narcissistic? I have several books that I recommend. I'm pulling them out right now to show you. I'm going to see if I can reach all of them without having to stand up here. I think I can read. I think I can. One's by Susan Forward. I know she's familiar. Oops, there they go. I know she's familiar to a lot of us, and she writes a lot on narcissism. Can't go wrong with Susan Forward stuff. It's fantastic. But here's one by her. It's called Mothers Who Can't Love. Mothers Who Can't Love. I highly recommend it. It's called A Healing Guide for Daughters. Another one is The Emotionally Absent Mother. The Emotionally Absent Mother. This one's written by Jasmine Lee Corey, C-O-R-I, Jasmine Lee Corey. And the whole title is The Emotionally Absent Mother, How to Recognize and Heal the Invisible Effects of Childhood Emotional Neglect. Really, really great book. Then one of my favorites is written by Lindsay Gibson. You probably, if you've know me, you know I've talked about her a lot. I ought to get her to come be interviewed. I would love to interview her. The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. This is for both moms and dads. How to Heal from Distant, Rejecting, or Self-Involved Parents. So that certainly fits the narcissist. Again, it's called The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Lindsay's gone on and written at least one more follow-up. There's one, I think one's called Recovery. It's a recovery book. It's really great. And I'm trying to find if I have any other ones. Those are the ones off the top of my head I think are really, really good. There are other books, but yeah, having a narcissistic, abusive mother does a particularly toxic things to particularly their daughters, because mothers often see us as a projection of themselves. So if they have a lot of self-hatred, then you're going to experience a lot of rejection and loathing and that you're going to just feel that put out on you. It's not actually from you. You're also not going to be seen as yourself. You're going to be seen through her lens of you. So, for example, my mom was struggled with being overweight, and so even though I was normal weight, she started me in dieting when I was 10 and 12. I don't know if you guys saw the video I just posted today about my vulnerable journey trying to work my way out of that, to reclaiming my health in a different way, in a healthier way. But yeah, we often end up being sort of a screen, a projection of our parents, unfortunately. And when you're a girl and it's your mother, it's very, very hard. Oh, I'm so glad, Sandy, you recommend When Narcissist Elderly Mom Needs Help. Oh, you were looking for a book recommending that. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the book that would follow it. The second book that I had was The Emotionally Absent Mother. Last name is Corey. Jasmine Corey wrote it. Jasmine Corey. Yeah. Can narcissistic moms create mental disorders in their dogs? Or I'm sorry, dogs. Why did I say that? I'm already reading ahead. That's why. In their daughters, can they bring on mental disorders? Yeah, absolutely they can. I think that it puts you more at risk of, I wouldn't be surprised for eating disorders. This is just me theorizing off the top of my head, okay? I'm not saying this is based on research. This is just Kerry McAvoy's, based on what I've seen in real life. I would say that puts them more at risk for anxiety disorders, depression, and possibly eating disorders. Lindsay Gibson, in her book, the last one I showed you, The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, she actually looked intensively at those raised by narcissistic parents. And she found that they tend to be very good at pleasing people, very show up for people. They tend to be high achievers, but the problem is that they're not very good at taking care of themselves and setting good boundaries. They're having a very hard time with that because boundaries weren't allowed in their home, so it becomes very hard to hold boundaries with other people as a result of that. I do link these books in my resource list. So if you go to the link in my bio and look for what's called mental health resources, I list these books in the mental health resources. In fact, after I get off of this, I will double check that all of these are in there, but I'm pretty sure that they are. So I'm going backwards now. So sorry for those of you who were like 80 comments away. I'm now at the end of it. Cynthia wants to know, is ADD associated or ADHD associated with narcissism, because I noticed a friend of mine has that tendency. Narcissism, when they lack self-direction and self-focus, and so as a result, they're not disciplined people. They struggle with discipline. It's very hard for them. And when you're not have a discipline and you're kind of like bored and you're distractible a lot, you're going to jump from activity to activity to activity. So yes, it can look like ADD or ADHD. One of the things I heard Dr. Ramani, I got to hear her speak, and I got to hear her live speak, but Dr. Ramani was saying in a presentation she was giving to mental health professionals was that in these individuals, that ADHD lives very near narcissism. Now, I'm not saying ADHD causes narcissism or narcissism cause ADHD. I'm just saying they happen to be near each other. They happen to show up together sometimes. So yes, but please, that is not a causal statement. We don't know, there's nothing to suggest that in the least, but they do tend to reside near each other. So Melissa's really worried that her daughter may be close to her husband and that he might then work on that relationship and keep the daughter away from her if there's a breakup. Yeah, that is a real concern. That happens more than we wish it would happen, in which narcissistic parents turn the children against the other parent. What you can hope for is through time, because this person is going to be true to themselves, they're going to be narcissistic, they will be abusive to their children as well, and that down the road the children sort of have this epiphany, this wake-up moment when they realize something's very, very wrong, and they work then to get better, and they realize that that's not who you are and that you've been there and been available the whole time. So what I'm saying is keep the faith, stay involved, do what you can, and hope that just with time things get clear. So why do narcissists talk about their exes? Well, part of it is because in their minds, their exes are still like that car being stored in the warehouse. They continue to exist for this person, and they see them as part of this legacy of their life that they revisit, like you revisit the cars in the warehouse, as crude as that is. They also do it, though, for another not good reason. It's a very manipulative reason, and that is because by sharing with you what that other person did wrong, they're telegraphing you what behaviors they expect from you. So if they said, well, that one, this is what happened to me, well, that one was really close to her friends and she put her friends over top of me, then you mentally say, oh, note to self, don't do that. Make sure that my social world, my social support system isn't in any way perceived as a competition to this person, because they're going to feel threatened by it. So they use it as a way to manage and control us, sadly. So that's another reason. It's manipulation. It's kind of a form of typecasting. So how do we help kids who are dealing with this? I would really recommend that you develop a kind of relationship where you can talk about tough stuff. You create space for that, where you say to them, how was your day? And when they say, not good, you can say, oh, really? I had not good days. And then to jump in and say, when my not good day happened, this is what it was like. What's your not good day like? And then you listen. You create space for them to share. Well, so-and-so called me a name on the playground. Oh, man, I hate it when it happens. I had that happen a lot. So what are you doing about it? How's it going around that? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do either. And I'm really glad that you're talking to me. Over time, I found that if I did these things, it really helped. That's what it looks like. It looks like that, where you invite them, you hear what they say, even though it's little. You use the little to expand based upon your own experience. You check back with them, see how it feels to them, then you expand more. But there's some rules to this. I'm going to give you some rules. Do not talk about your narcissistic parent, the other co-parent, in a negative way. Don't make them choose sides. Children have this innate ability, this innate need to always keep everybody in their world in their world. If they feel you're going to make them choose sides, they're going to choose the more fragile parent. And guess what? That's not you. They're going to choose that toxic person because they can feel that relationship is very risky, very, very fragile, and they'll choose it. So don't make them choose. Can a relationship with a narcissistic partner heal and work, or is it not going to happen and I should get out? I hate to tell you, I think 97 to 99% of the time, it is not happening. This is the question I'd ask for you, Sammy. Ask yourself this. Is there anything about this relationship that is so hurtful or uncomfortable for my partner that's going to motivate them to get help? And your pain isn't it. If there's nothing else happening to make this person feel bad or uncomfortable, I don't know how many times I've heard narcissistic partners say, well, I don't have a problem. The problem's him or the problem's her. If she would just or he would just get over it, we would be just fine. And they believe that. That is really how they see things. No one's changing when that's how they perceive things. If they perceive you as the problem, they're not getting better. I'm going to jump to the end, and then I'm going to be wrapping up this in a few minutes. Just so you guys know, a couple things as I think about it. I have a podcast that I post now. It's on Mondays and Thursdays. It's a repeat of the best of these, just a couple pieces of the lives, a repeat of that. I'm now going to post lives in their entirety over on YouTube. So if you missed this, you can replay it over on YouTube and find me. My handle over there is at Kerry McAvoy, Ph.D. Also, please don't forget to get your tickets for Kristen Milston's webinar coming up on August 18th. It's going to be freaking amazing. Everything you wanted to know about cognitive dissonance. And I'm trying to think of anything. You can meet me. You want to meet me? I'm going to be at a live meet and greet. I will be in Durham, North Carolina on July 25th, along with Lee Hammock, Mental Healness, Ben Taylor, Raw Motivation, and Abuse is Abuse, Bree Peterson. We're going to be there live. And I will bring books, autographed books, if you want to buy from me directly. It's going to be super amazing. I can't wait to see you guys in person, shake your hand, give you a hug maybe if you feel comfortable despite COVID. But I would really love to meet you guys. So please, I have that posted a couple places. You're going to see more of it out. It's at Lakewood in Durham, North Carolina. It's at 3 to 6 p.m. at Lakewood, or Honeysuckle at Lakewood. Honeysuckle at Lakewood. I knew I was getting it wrong. Yes, we're going to be doing it in Texas. It's going to be in Austin, Texas in October. So we're going to play. We haven't set the dates yet, but Tina, we will be in Austin, Texas, doing it in Texas. So I think that's the very next time we're going to be in live. So where you can actually meet us. I'm so excited. But let me take a last couple of questions before I wrap it up today. I don't talk about logic, love. That's kind of an interesting name. I don't talk about ADHD a whole lot because I frankly don't consider myself an expert enough in it. It's a very biological disorder. You have to know a lot of the biology about it. I don't. I've not spent the time to understand it. So that's why I don't do more content on it. It's just because I don't feel I have the credibility to talk about it as a result of it. Do I do therapy these days? No, I don't do therapy these days. I do offer a one-time consultation. So if you just want a place to sort of vent with me over a live call, or it's a Zoom call, and talk about where you're at and find some direction, you want to do it for 50 minutes, I do offer that. I know that maybe feels like not a lot, but at least it's something where I get you get my undivided attention about the specificity of your situation. So yeah, you can find that. It's in, again, the link in my bio also offers the calendar. So if you want to do that. Any last questions before I wrap it up today? I'm kind of checking through the last bit of this. You guys are really, really awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you for being here on my platform, for supporting me, for getting the word out. This is really what it's about. To me, it's all about raising public awareness of narcissistic abuse so that we can stop it, so that we can get better and heal and recover. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Oh, talks to the ex and has a new supply. Why? Can you say more? I'll stay back on long enough for you to add more. You talks to your ex and has a new supply. So why do they talk to the ex? Why he has a new supply? Because it's never not enough supply. That's why. I will be going live on Thursday at 12:30 again, same time. Next week you won't see me, but I will be hanging out with Lisa Sony and Roller Coaster of Love and I are all taking a trip together. So we're going to be posting some content together. Watch for that. That's going to be amazing. I can't wait to meet these two amazing creators. I love their stuff. They're really, really awesome. So I'm still waiting for you, by the way, Merc for data. I know that you want to say more, so I want to make sure I don't miss that. But I'm glad this has been a helpful time that you guys have hanging out with me today. Thank you so much. maybe I already answered your question. Why do they keep talking to the ex while they have a new supply? Because you guys never stop existing in their minds, you know? Yeah, and they're keeping you on. Think of it, it's like the second and third string. You know, they always want to keep more around. Yeah, exactly. You've become the second and third string, I hate to tell you. So you deserve better. You deserve to be first. You deserve to be the center, the quarterback. So go no contact. It's not worth it. I'm sorry. You're worth way more than that. All right, guys, I'll see you on Thursday at 12:30. Thank you so much. This is awesome. Bye-bye.